The attorney Dina Doll joins us right now in our New York studio. Dina, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Let's look on the telestrator. We have the dismissed jurors again that Laura was talking about. What do you make of this? Because we were looking at juror number 2 right here. This is the, again, I mentioned this earlier, but the fact that her profession is oncology nurse, I don't think is necessarily the issue. But maybe that some media organizations are going a little bit further than that became the issue. Have you seen stuff like this before?
Well, in a high-profile case like this, everyone is so interested in who the jurors are. And evidently, she got a lot of messages where people were guessing this was for her, and she was afraid that her identity was going to be revealed. We don't want the jurors in this case to feel pressured any way, shape, or form. So that was the right thing to excuse her once she was worried. Again, the jurors is supposed to be anonymous to the public, not to the two sides, but to the public. And there it seemed like her anonymity was going to be threatened. And
the other guy's an IT consultant again, but that was more of his background, So you think they're going to be able to put together, they eventually will, but maybe we're back to that conversation we were having at the beginning. This could take a while to put together this jury of 12 with the 6 alternates. We thought we were going to move fast. Doesn't seem like it.
We definitely took a step back today.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen trials where we're down to 1 and that 1 juror takes days. Because at the end of the day, it's luck, right?
Right.
What pool comes in, how many of them get disqualified for cause. At one point, the two sides are going to get, down to 0 with their preemptory challenges.
You get 10?
Exactly. And
apparently Trump didn't know that. So he said, what do you mean we only get 10? But you get 10, right?
For the initial 12. And then when they go and get their alternates, they're going to have 6 alternates, they get some more preemptory challenge for those 6 alternates. But at one point, they will both get down to 0. But jurors can still be removed for cause, even then. So it's kind of the luck of the draw, how many of those get removed. And that really is why it's hard to predict when we're getting
I keep thinking how much 1 might matter, because it only takes 1. I mentioned this yesterday, to hang the jury, right? And the case like this, I don't know if that's a strategy a lawyer would go in with, but it's certainly got to be in the back of people's minds, right?
I mean, I think for defense, that's a win.
Of course.
Having a mistrial or a hung jury and having to ask the prosecutors to redo it, they might, but that's a whole other ball of wax. And so absolutely they wanted acquittal, and if not that, at least 1 juror who gets this jury hung. I'm
also, this is back on the telestrator for a moment, curious about these 2 jurors, and we're going to put up a headline in a moment on this. Juror 3 and Juror 7. Okay, why? Because of their professions. Nothing wrong with this profession, Dina. Maybe you know people that are. Corporate attorney and just lawyer in particular. All right, lawyers, Politico headline. 2 of Trump's jurors are lawyers. Would they acquit on a technicality? What do you think of that? Are lawyers, I know you have to remove yourself from this conversation for a moment, good jurors, and might they be more likely to acquit on a technicality? What do you say?
Well, it's interesting, because usually we never want a lawyer on the jury, not so much because of the technicality issue, but because their opinion ends up becoming overly influential. And the non-lawyers will kind of defer to them. And so that's a big risk, because you want to convince 12 jurors, and now you really have to convince that 1 lawyer jury. But the fact that they have 2 different lawyers here, I think it's going to make it interesting, because they could have completely different viewpoints. And so that might help, having had more than 1 lawyer. You might not have that leadership issue. And who knows, maybe we'll end up with even more lawyers.
Well, I'm trying to think that, people say that are on Trump's side especially, or he said himself he can't get a fair shake in New York. Would a lawyer, just because of the way they approach the world, the way they think about it, be maybe in this case the profession that you're looking for? I don't know. Maybe, I'm sure plenty of people say, oh, they're liberal lawyers in New York. That's not going to be the case. But lawyers have their way of approaching things and trying to look at both sides. Maybe this is a special case.
I mean, I think a lawyer could also be really politically biased, let's say.
Sure.
So I think the important thing is kind of what you were, I think, alluding to, is like looking at it in an unemotional way. And I think there's several different types of professions that do that on a daily basis. And so really what's important is looking at the facts and the law as the judge has presented them. If the lawyer feels as if they understand the law better than the judge, that's a problem. And it could be a problem for Trump, as well as the prosecution.
All right, let's talk just for the minute we have left about the facts of the case. I mean, I know jury selection is fascinating and it's going on right now and it's important, but once they do start with opening statements and the arguments and the witnesses and all the rest, what would you say about this case? Not before. Some people had opinions, said this is a weak case, shouldn't have been brought. But now that it has been brought, what about the evidence of falsifying business records and whether it rises to something that would have interfered with an election? What do you think of the evidence that you've seen?
I mean, we will see opening statements are going to be very important because we've seen some in the indictment, but really hearing what the prosecution is actually planning on their theory, as well as defense theory, we'll know what evidence they're really going to be focusing on. But it's the falsification of the documents is going to be all about the papers. Who did the ledgers? Maybe fairly boring testimony. Who did the ledgers, and did Trump cause that person to do the ledgers, you know, falsely, essentially? And then the second thing is, was it for the intention to conceal a crime? They don't have to prove that he committed that other crime, just that his purpose was to conceal the crime.
All right. While you're speaking, we've got a little news. I guess you should react to it, but there's not much you can say, I don't think, other than, well, that's interesting. Juror 2 and Juror 4 are back. In other words, new replacements have been found. So we went from 5. I've been told just a couple of minutes ago, it's been announced that 2 more jurors have been seated to replace those 2. We had talked earlier about these jurors that had been replaced, juror number 2 and juror number 4, the excused jurors. We could put those up. That was the oncology nurse and the IT consultant. Those were the old ones. Up there, there are 2 new ones. So I guess we can make progress. It's just going to be, it's going to take time. I wonder if they'll stick.
They're trying to be thorough, which both sides really want. And that's a lot of this is the hearing what they have to say in open court and then doing the research and making sure the social media posts, et cetera, are matching that. And that's why we're going back and forth.
Right. Because
both sides really want to make sure to get this right. But Judge Merchan is going quickly here. Some judges could drag it out longer. He won't. So if luck is in his favor, I do think this is going to go fairly quick.
All right, Dina, thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you here in New York today.